welcome to the Royal Geek Podcast. I'm your host tonight, Justin Sandoval, aka Sandy, and I'm joined, as always, by Anthony Amato, who we like to call Shamato. That's right, T-Roll is not here again. He just sucks, apparently.
Slacker.
Yeah. Big time slacker. We don't like him. Why is he on this podcast? Anyway, all that aside, the show must go on. And Shamato and I are here to talk about Daredevil.
Yep.
And so, yeah, this should be a fun discussion. So, anyway, let's get the business out of the way. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you. Please go ahead and give us a like, follow, thumbs up. Follow us on our social medias at Royal Geek Pod. Share this podcast with a friend if you know somebody who is into Marvel or Daredevil or just likes quality television. Go ahead and send them this link. And we really appreciate it. Or go ahead and give us a review. Come on, man. Just what's the big deal? It's just like maybe 45 seconds on your phone.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yep.
All that aside, Shamato and I are going to dive into this episode of Daredevil, which is titled Isle of Joy. A very interesting title for this episode. Let me go ahead and give you your spoiler warning. This is the penultimate episode, so that means the finale is next week. So a lot goes down in this episode, and
does.
we're here to talk about it. So spoiler warning, and that's aside. Here we go. Shamato, overall thoughts on the episode?
I felt like there were a lot of things that just were like falling into place in this episode. We kind of had a reemergence of another character. We had, just kind of things falling apart, falling into place for one side. A lot of like pretty traditional like ideas of what's happening at the end of a season happened in this episode, and not in a bad way. It's just, you saw all the pieces moving to where they're kind of pointing in the same direction,
Yeah, no, that absolutely. I do think that this episode it gave us a lot but also without revealing the final conclusion of the story. And it did give us a lot. And honestly, the way the story was being told in this episode was done so well. Like the writing for this series has been spot on. And so I'm definitely excited to kind of break this episode down. So let's start off in the beginning. I think the beginning is very, very crucial. I did find the visuals of the intro being the bright blue rose. The camera kind of goes to this like upside down inverted because you see the hands start reaching towards it and it goes upside down. And it's actually a rose bush in front of the prison where Bullseye is being held. Poindexter, he is being transferred into General Pop, and so he's not being isolated anymore. He is going into where the rest of the prisoners are, which for former agents, police officers, military people, like, it's not a good spot to be.
Yeah, especially, although honestly, if his hands were free, I think he might have loved it.
True,
But with him having his hands tied up, he knows this is a losing battle.
Yeah, he does not have a chance, it seems like. So we know that he was being transferred into Gen Pop, and I believe the line is dropped, the order came from up top or something along those lines. Something along the lines like
it very much seems like it was Kingpin who did it.
Right, it alludes to Kingpin doing it, which that is a pretty pivotal plot point moving forward in this episode. So I do think that this is a pretty big deal for Poindexter. He's like, okay, my hands are tied. I'm going to be in here with these people who could potentially like attack me, kill me, that kind of thing. And he ends up requesting counsel, and he calls for Matt Murdock. So we'll get there. After this scene, we kind of see Matt and Heather Glenn kind of having an argument. She's kind of working away on her vigilante project, and they are arguing about the
validity of what a vigilante is.
Correct, and so much so to where she's pointing out that Daredevil and Muse are the same because of violence, right?
Yes.
Violence is her kind of catalyst for this entire conversation, right? She kind of she mentions that she saved herself after Matt says
Yes.
Daredevil saved her and Muse tried to kill her, and she's like, "No, I saved myself." Which, yes, she did kill
In a
Muse.
way, yes.
She did kill Muse, but it was because of Daredevil putting her in a situation where she can
It is true.
take
It
him
was
out.
it definitely seems like they're in part of this conversation where the relationship is very strained, and they are they're definitely on the rocks at the moment. And then they have these diametrically opposed ideas about vigilantes for obvious reasons. And you're just seeing her. She never really liked vigilantes or people with masks in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's kind of coming out, and of course Matt doesn't want to be associated with those types of people, with him being Daredevil, of course, and he doesn't like the idea of him being similar to someone like Muse. Like, I think he thinks he's saving people,
Right.
which,
Right.
he is, but I think it's also more like the pain that, you know, Muse was purposefully inflicting
Right.
on, helpless people is something that Matt cannot wrap his mind around, that he would be considered to be anything like that.
Yeah, I feel like Matt thinks that he's more righteous, and
Yeah,
I think he's using that to kind of justify the things that he's doing, even though what he's doing is not necessarily
legal.
legal. Yeah, he's going a roundabout way of doing it.
Yes,
Uh,
I think he's like kind of like in a way he's attacking. He's going at it in the way that there's what is legally good and what is morally good, and I
yeah.
think that's in his mind what he's going for. What cannot be done legally good, I must do morally good.
Yeah, yeah. And at the exact same time this argument is happening,
Yes,
we are seeing a parallel here with Kingpin leading Vanessa down into his basement.
yes,
We see the painting, the white painting with the blood splatter on it,
yeah,
and he is bringing Vanessa to Adam. And he
yes,
said, "I told you, I kept my promise. I did not kill him."
yes,
And essentially, the argument that that Matt and Dr. Glenn are having, there's more of a like coming together moment for Vanessa and Kingpin.
yes,
So
yes,
much so where they're talking about Adam, and she's like, I mean, I'm glad you didn't do anything to him, but I mean, this has to end between us. Like, we have to put this to bed. And
yeah.
she ends up killing Adam.
She does.
And the shot, the shot where they Kingpin holds her and puts his head against her, but the camera focuses between them and Adam's dead body lying in the cell down there, which is
Yes.
so
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah. Phenomenally shot. And it's interesting in this scene, like the way that Kingpin talks to Vanessa. It's very similar to, like, it's almost like if you were to catch your kid doing something they shouldn't be doing, and that kind of almost like, slightly like, slightly like kind of almost ashamed, but like, like they're, they're kind of in this state of like, oh, like their heads down. They're kind of like that. I kind of felt like that's how Kingpin was going at it in this moment, like with Vanessa, as he was coming with his head down, tail between his legs, like kind of laying out everything for Vanessa.
Yeah, no, exactly. And they ended up appeared to be reconciling.
Yes,
But I think one of the bigger reveals when they first start their conversation for me was she did that to Luke on purpose. It was like
yes,
this, it was a
yeah,
setup.
yeah. It was pretty well confirmed that you guys, or you kind of lined that up the end of last week's pod about what was happening actually with Luca. So once again, just showing that she is where her loyalties really lie,
Yep.
and well, how things are playing out.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of playing out, Matt and Heather are interrupted by a knock at the door, and it's
Yes,
Buck hand delivering a invitation to a black and white ball for Dr. Glenn.
yes,
And this only fuels fire to the argument to where Matt is like, he's trying to control you. He's controlling the narrative of the vigilantes. He's
yes,
using you as like the victim. And like, he's just going in, and he's like, you can't go. And she's like, well, I'm going to go. And
yeah,
you're coming. Like, if you want to come, you can come. And
And he's like, "I'm not invited,"
right.
which was like that was a pretty good the way that he says that, and then she just kind of like slaps him back, and she's like,
Yep.
"Dr. Glenn and guest," and
Yeah.
is like
There you go.
essentially like pushing back, like calling his bluff in that moment. I think in that moment he wanted the answer to be cut and dry.
Yeah.
I'm not invited. I'm not supposed to be there.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, but then she's like, no, you are choosing to not be there if you don't. Like, it's there,
Right.
you know? So I think there's that. And I think one of the interesting ways to look at this conversation, and I think from our perspective, we really want to look at it like Matt is right. Dr. Glenn is naive. She's not paying attention. She isn't doing the right thing.
She doesn't see the full picture.
She doesn't see the full picture. But the thing is, like when you look at it from her perspective, she's just seeing this her boyfriend who's been super distant, been super off, being extremely jealous and being over the top about this person who is been nothing but essentially nice to her.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't understand because Matt Murdock refuses to inform her in a way that makes sense because he just says he's bad.
Right.
But he gives no evidence. He gives nothing else about what is truly happening with Mayor Fisk. So there's no real reason for her to be like, oh, I really don't need to be going to this event. Like,
right.
so I think it's interesting having to like twist your mind just a little bit because we've seen everything through essentially Daredevil's, point of view.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really good because, yeah, she actually has a good point too between like her stance on vigilantes too. I mean, essentially they are outside the law. So
They are.
We live in society, we are a part of a governed body.
Yes.
So there are certain rules and regulations, and this kind of operates
Yeah.
outside of that.
Yeah.
I get that aspect of it, but I also see on the other side where sometimes doing the right thing means you have to kind of get your hands dirty a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, it's very much like this idea of like there is laws and there are rule sets, but he's kind of the exception to the rule essentially because like
Yeah.
there are so many options where the person who is the vigilante is doing something excessive and doing something extra, or they're using their powers for evil, or things like that. And you know he is the exception to the rule in the sense that he's trying to do positive good.
Right, exactly. So he ends up having to go into the office because there's like an all hands meeting.
Yes.
He ends up being late to that. But we do see a little bit of they're working a case.
Yes.
And they're representing somebody who is kind of a D-bag of what I gathered. He
Yeah.
is something against teachers.
Yeah,
is the
it
case.
sounds like he was stealing from like teacher retirement.
Yeah.
You know.
And Matt ends up catching him in a lie, and he storms off, calls him out on it, storms off,
Yes.
and he gets checked, and then because he got that news, dropped that Poindexter and wants to talk to him.
Yes.
And he's very distraught and very out of it. You can tell he's flustered, and he just kind of storms off. And he ends up going to Josie's bar and standing out front, and she brings him inside. It's been closed down ever since Foggy's passing. And she's talking to him about thinking about reopening it, but she's not sure if the community's ready for it. But Cherry shows up. I love how Cherry just like keeping tabs on him because of Kristen. And she says some things about Foggy was drinking this bottle of scotch.
Yes.
And it was because Matt put it together. It was an early celebration. He knew he was going to win, but so therefore he was being killed off and silenced.
Yes.
And that led him and sparked him to want to go talk to Poindexter.
Yes. Which I will admit, at this moment, I was kind of expecting maybe the twist to be something different. I was kind of thinking maybe something would be said and he would come to the conclusion that whatever was happening, it was something in Foggy's drink would be there to slow his heart rate. That's kind of what I was...
Interesting.
Like... to the point where, like, the idea of him, because there has been ideas thrown about the fact that Foggy's really faking his death. So like I was thinking maybe they were going to go down that line where maybe he's going to have a little bit of hope about the idea that maybe Foggy is still out there in some capacity. But it
Yeah.
ended up not going in that direction. But that was my initial thought. It was like
Yeah.
maybe going in that direction.
That would have been interesting, and I'm not sure how they could have pulled that off. I don't know. That's a tough one. So yeah, I think him coming to that realization.
Well, the way they would pull it off was this. Deborah Ann Wool was also in on it, her character.
Oh god, and that's why she's
Um,
distanced herself from Matt because
yes, because she can't really
keep up
lie
with
to
it.
him.
Yeah.
The drink slows his heart rate down. He quote unquote dies on the street. He literally hears his heart stop beating because it falls below a point to where he can hear it, and then he like is able to, he's kind of whisked away, and yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't know. I think I'm out on that one. I don't know. I just can't see it.
Yep.
But
I mean,
it's
I'm
a
not
fun one.
saying,
It's a
but
fun
like
one.
it
It's a
is an
fun one to
idea
think
that
about.
I've seen out there.
Yeah. So anyway, he goes to confront Poindexter, and I mean, this is a good scene between both of them.
Yeah.
He's like, Poindexter's like, get me out of here. Like they put me in Gen Pop, and it came down from somebody's orders or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And he ends up going back and forth enough to where it enrages Matt to slam his head into the table
Yeah.
multiple times, very hard.
Yes.
And he's like guard, he's smashing his own head into the table, and just
Yeah.
the smile that Poindexter has on his face.
I mean, he really should have taken a line from the Joker. I mean, you never start with a head.
Yeah, it makes you feel all fuzzy, man.
Yes.
And yeah, he definitely was feeling something after that.
Yeah.
Because he had to go to the infirmary, and
Yes.
this scene was absolutely incredible. We get a panel shot from a comic book where Bullseye's tooth, he uses it as a weapon.
Yes.
And it is absolutely incredible. The way it's done is he's working on his loose tooth, and the police officer guard unlocks his one shackle, and then he shoots the tooth into his head, and is able to escape, and he's gone. He's just out, dude.
Yep.
That was such a cool scene.
Yes.
I love that scene.
It really just like brings back the ideas of just like how interesting and like kind of crazy the powers of Deadpool, or not Deadpool, Bullseye are.
Yeah.
Just like the fact that like what he can do with a projectile is just like insane.
Then he starts like throwing scalpels and stuff. Like he's just picking up items and just tossing them and killing
Yes.
people.
Yeah, doing all kind of crazy stuff, which makes him like he's this phenomenal like foil of a character
Right.
to Daredevil, just because of the fact of like what they choose to fight with or are
Right.
gifted with fighting with. Because Matt's of course he has to be essentially hands on with everything he does. Everything he does, everything is about his lack of sight. Whereas Poindexter's literally his entire power and ability is based off sight. And like distance is the main thing that helps him out. Like it's sort of arranged, so it's a very interesting. Like anytime they have to fight or face each other, it's a very interesting chess match.
Yes. Speaking of interesting, around this time or a little bit before this time, Kingpin he promotes Daniel Blake to
Yes.
his deputy mayor of communication, which he gets a little bit of pushback from Sheila
Yes.
on how she disagreed with that. He's
Which
not quite ready yet.
honestly, I mean, I agree with her.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a young guy, hasn't really
Kinda
been
has
in
done
the
dumb stuff.
right, hasn't really been in this world long enough to kind of make a decision like that. But anyway, I think that's going to play out in a little bit too, because we do see kind of some of that play out in this party scene.
Yeah.
Which before we get to the final scene where it's the black and white party, I think this is a good time. On a penultimate episode, we usually play a little fun game of buy or sell.
Let's do it.
Let's go ahead and do it. So I got a few for you. Buy or sell. We are seeing the Punisher again.
I am going to. I'm going to sell it. Unfortunately.
Oof. So one-off. You only think he's a one-off?
Yeah, I just feel like the way that they've talked about him and in like production and stuff like that, that he's probably done for Daredevil.
Interesting. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna buy that we will see him, and I do think we're.
I mean, I hope that.
Yeah,
I hope you win out on that.
Yeah.
One, honestly.
So yeah, I would love to see him in action for sure. All right. Buy or sell. We are getting a MCU cameo in the final episode.
Um, I am going to say I will buy it, and it may just be one we've already seen. It may be the Swordman again, as we saw him in this episode and a previous episode. So I think there's a possibility that we see him maybe again at some point, or maybe some second, tier-ish type of character.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see Haley Steinfeld show
Yeah.
up maybe, Kate Bishop. That'd be an interesting one. Just to kind of like remind you that those people exist.
Right. No, I'm gonna buy it as well. I think we are gonna get an MCU cameo. I think a fun one that they've kind of already laid down some groundwork for would be Kamala Khan. I do think seeing
Yeah,
her cameo,
that would be
or
very interesting.
just maybe one of the ending scenes where after all the fighting's done, he goes to dinner. Oh,
Yeah, he finally actually
yeah,
goes to dinner with that
and
family.
interacts. Yeah, that would be
I
interesting.
mean, another interesting one would be maybe him calling in a favor and it being Spider-Man.
Yes, that was the one
Like,
I
okay,
was kind of
yeah,
gonna go to next, where I was like, I mean, he's already had a crossover there. It's possible. Another part of me
yeah.
is like, do they bring out She-Hulk? Like, what?
Yeah,
I was like,
I was just thinking about that one too. Like, do they want to dive back in there right now?
yeah, do we need
Um,
that character back right now? I didn't mind the actress. I didn't mind that, like her performance, but it's
yeah,
just the plot and storyline and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
Like,
That's a whole other thing.
there's a bit of a stink on her character at the moment. In that sense, and on the fact that honestly, the Daredevil universe doesn't really fit
No,
like stylistically with the She-Hulk
no, it
universe.
does not. Not at all. So yeah, okay, that's a good one. And all right, another one. All right, buy or sell. Kingpin will die.
Um, I'm gonna sell that.
Okay.
I mean, does he get injured? Does something like that happen? Sure, but I don't think he's gonna
Mm.
die.
As much as I would love for Kingpin to transition over to being a big bad in the movie verse, as far as maybe a Spider-Man villain or just another chance to be a villain, I kind of feel like Vincent D'Onofrio, as an actor in general, I feel like he's not going to want to do this forever.
Yeah, you are correct. He's kind of towards like the end of his potential lifespan as a character like Kingpin because he still has to be very physical, in this role. It isn't like, he can just kind of sit back and not, fight anybody. He still has to stay big, even though I know that's not all him,
Right.
but like, he still has to stay pretty big and he has to stay, you know, in his ability to fight. So I do understand that
Yeah.
maybe they go out, on their
So
own
I'm kind
terms.
of half buying, half selling on that one. Like I think it's a possibility. I really
Yeah.
do. Maybe not this season, maybe next season, but yeah. All right.
Buy or sell. By the end of the series, Heather and Matt will have broken up
Ooh, I mean this episode makes you feel like it.
until the very end.
Yeah.
Like at that last moment, I feel like she's like back
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
I think that Matt is going to reveal himself, or she's going to discover that he's Daredevil, and they are going to break up.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So I'm gonna go ahead and
You'll. I mean, I guess we'll say they will break up was the
yes.
buy or sell.
Okay,
Yes.
there you go. Yes, I will buy that. Yes.
Yeah.
You're buying that as well?
Yeah, I'll buy that since I just feel like they're working in that direction.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because I don't think there's anything. I don't see there's any positive way it could end in that. Because like okay, so he doesn't tell her. The relationship just gets worse because he's lying to her, and she knows he's lying, and she knows there's a whole bunch of stuff there. Or he tells her, and he's literally the thing that she is against.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. That I can see that happening too, for sure. All right, let's see, one more here. There will be a significant death in the finale.
Um, honestly, hmm. Um, I'm gonna probably sell that. I think the biggest character that could end up going would be um, could be Daniel. Like I think there could be a chance that he, meets his end, or maybe even is it Bert or
Buck.
Buck? I think he could end up being, like almost sacrificed in a way.
Mm.
But I don't think it's gonna be anyone on the lines of like I don't think it's gonna be Heather or Matt or or
Vanessa.
Kingpin or Vanessa or Bullseye or
Yeah.
although honestly, to tell you the truth, I was quite surprised that they straight up just killed off Muse
That's
at the
true.
end of that episode. I was expecting him to be make it further
In the
into
background, yeah.
like I was expecting him to either be like if he was going to be knocked off the final episode of the season. Maybe it was me misunderstanding what his character was supposed to be in this. Like
Yeah.
he was more just like an ends to a means, possibly, is what it seemed like, rather than like a true villain.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm selling this. I don't think that a single significant person is actually going to
Yeah,
die in
I
this.
mean, it is the MCU.
It is the MCU. Sometimes the stakes in the MCU are not as high,
Yeah,
and that's something they need to maybe rectify
yeah,
soon. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. I feel like there needs to be some sort of weight to
yeah,
these
yeah.
characters.
The problem is they're trying to maximize longevity, and there's a pretty significant end if you kill off somebody to their longevity.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
just from like a money making perspective, it's like, oh, we make a really good show, but if you kill off some of those people, they can't come back.
Correct. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That's interesting. All right. Well, that's the end of our buy or sell. Let's go ahead and get into this final act here, where we see Heather show up to the black and white party alone.
Yes.
We see Vanessa is kind of working the room a little bit with
Yes.
Kingpin making the entrance, right? And they're all mingling. It's typical bumping elbows, networking, information going on to promote the Red Hook.
yeah. There's some very interesting like camera shots in this scene
There
where it's
are.
like
Ooh, I did.
where
Yeah.
you're like catching like glimpses of conversations rather than
Mhm.
instead of like doing a full cut in between each conversation, they would literally just pan away from him and it would almost fade
Yeah.
out. So I enjoyed that. Like it was almost like it was almost like you as the audience were at the ball and
Yeah.
you were kind of walking through and just catching parts of people's
Yeah, I'm
conversations.
glad you brought up the camera work because they did a phenomenal job with this. Like, it's like a three camera angle shot that they do, and it's like the focus is on like the front of the scene and the conversation's happening there, but then all of a sudden the same exact scene doesn't shift, doesn't move or anything. It just the focus changes and it goes to like the medium depth.
Yeah.
And then there's another conversation happening with like Sheila in the background, and then the camera does a third shift, and it is long distance now, where those first two conversations are blurred in front of you, and you see in clarity the very far distance one.
Yeah.
And it was just done in such a
Yes.
crisp, clean transition, and it looks so beautiful.
Yeah.
Doing
It was phenomenal.
Yeah, and so we see kind of Kingpin.
Doing his best Godfather impression.
Yes, exactly. You owe me a favor, or I'm gonna do you a favor, or
Yes.
you better do this, that kind of thing, right? Matt shows up. Him and Glenn, Dr. Glenn, have another argument where she's talking to him, but he overhears Kingpin, and therefore he is now ignoring her.
Yes.
So this went from like a happy, like loving, very surreal,
Supportive relationship. Yeah.
to now there is like a full-on wall, which granted is a majority Matt Murdock's fault. But he's listening to the swordsman and Kingpin talk in the other room. And I found this conversation interesting, not necessarily because of what they were talking about, but because of the visuals, because the on-screen Swordsman stands up and Kingpin is standing up, and Kingpin dwarfs him, dude. Like
Yeah.
like
He's enormous.
He is enormous, and
yeah.
he is just looking down at him, and his swordsman's head is like fully tilted, like looking up at him, and the fact that he's standing there and holding his ground against that massive of a individual that the scene is portraying, I feel like he's not really that big, but I feel like the camera angles made him
Yeah,
that
but
big.
it's really important to like that's one of the awesome things about Kingpin in general is like he's supposed to be this just overarching like when you see him in the comic books he just like he's this size that is like unimaginable and completely impossible to replicate on screen for the
Correct.
most
Yes.
part
Yes.
effectively without CGI. And I feel like, but I think they did a really good job of doing their best of of like you said through camera work and angles and things like that, making him look as intimidating as possible with his size.
Yes, and they did it. They did a good job there too. So Matt overhears that conversation, and he's basically listening to every conversation that Kingpin is making. And Kingpin, he's onto it. He knows that he's in the room, and he uh, they end up doing a first dance, right, with Vanessa and Kingpin.
Yes.
After Matt tries dragging Dr. Glenn to him to show how corrupt he is. And while Vanessa and Kingpin are dancing, Kingpin is like whispering but talking to Matt Murdock about the devil's back and
Yes.
that kind of thing. I thought that was very
Yeah.
interesting as well.
Very much so. It was like it was really cool just seeing like the whole like Kingpin's essentially toying with Matt at this moment.
Correct.
'Cause
Yeah.
I think at this moment it's almost like Kingpin knows that Matt can't really do anything here.
Correct. Yeah.
So he's almost flaunting in a way.
Yeah.
Like his power, his abilities here. He's essentially, kind of just saying like I have the power right now and I have the control of
Yeah.
this situation and I am going to use it to just like twist the knife.
Right, and he flaunts that control up into a point to where up until a point when Vanessa starts talking.
Maybe let's hold right here and
Okay.
maybe move to the rest of the stuff and put that towards like the end.
That's, oh yeah,
Last
that's
scene.
good. Yeah, let's talk about
Like yeah,
Daniel, BB, and Commissioner.
yeah. So there's a photographer that is, or a journalist who is
Snapping
there,
pictures of Kingpin.
who's taking pictures of
know.
Kingpin, and he is taken out to the kitchen by Kingpin's task force.
Ooh, yeah, Officer Powell is
Yes.
dragging him in there, and dude, how about the fact that Gallo comes in? He says, "Leave him alone, or I'm gonna charge you for the
Yes.
assault." He's like, "I didn't assault the guy," and then he takes his hand.
He's like, "That's not assault," and
Yeah.
just dips his hand in a fryer.
Yes. Oh man, how, dude, very Novocaine-esque, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very Novocaine-esque. If you guys have watched that movie, you know exactly what that is. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is. It is definitely this moment where you're just seeing like just how out of control the task force really is, and obviously you're seeing the commissioner who feels like he should have control over his cops
Exactly.
no longer
control.
has any control over the cops, which is an interesting idea because for the most part although he's been very anti Kingpin up until this moment, he hasn't really been active you know in other ways of fighting back. Like he did have some things at the very beginning Fisk's mayoral um, term,
Yeah.
but like he was basically like pushing back and doing some kind of underhanded things to kind of like stop Kingpin.
Right.
But he kind of given in at this point.
Yeah, and you mentioned losing control over your cops. So we see he's like first he's threatening Pal, and then all of a sudden all the other task force members show up, and then now he's like, okay, I
He
need to get out of
sees,
here. Yeah.
he sees that the
He has
tide
no
has
control.
turned.
Yeah, no
Yes.
control over his team. So he leaves, but him and BB ends up catching him, and
Yes.
she's basically just trying to fish for information, doing her job as a reporter, as a
Yes.
journalist, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that article about you highlighting the task force and they're stopping when we all knew it was Daredevil, that kind of thing, right?"
Yeah.
And her line back to him was like, "Well, I started the same time that you, Fisk put his hand up your butt and started controlling you."
Yeah.
And so then they kind of have this conversation of like, Kingpin was the lead suspect for your uncle's
Yes.
murder. And she's like, "Yeah, I know. That's what I'm working on." And he's like, "Okay." And they're like, "Are you working tonight?" He's like, "Well, no." And she's like, "Well, I'm working tonight." That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, which is really interesting because you see this switch indeed in BB's character at this moment that I feel like I'm so glad because honestly, I feel like they were presenting her as one thing, but when you really got down to what she was doing, she was pretty insufferable. Honestly,
Yeah.
like up until this point in her journalistic journey, like she was doing this stuff on the street, but then she was also like the stuff that she did to Daniel and like things like that. I was like, this is some real like kind of shady, underhanded stuff. And like the reports that she was putting out, the positivity with Kingpin and stuff like that. And I know she got coerced in some ways, but it was also like up until this moment where she essentially like flipped the switch and was like, essentially, you know, completely saying I'm a double agent.
Right. She's worked her way into a position where she wants to be.
Yes,
That kind of thing.
she's essentially, I don't know, in some ways she's almost like how much has she gotten Daniel to where he is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for
In
sure.
a way, gotten him into a position where he can feed her information without him even knowing that he is, really doing it.
And she mentions to Gallo that everything she writes is not always in her name.
Yes.
And that leads Gallo to be like, I have files on all the task force members that
Yes.
you may or may not want to take a look at, that kind of thing. And the serious conversation of, oh, are we going to spill all this information out there? And then she's like, okay, well, I got to go back to work. And then she turns around and she like takes like 2 steps. She's like, shots. And like,
Yes.
you can, from that right there, that moment right there, you're like, okay, there's more to this character than what we've seen.
Which I am super glad that we got.
Yeah.
Because honestly, she was maybe like the least favorite part of the show so far, up until like this turn. Honestly, just because she just seemed like this entitled, person who was, trying to do everything for her. Essentially, she, under the guise of doing it for the city, she was doing everything for herself.
Yeah, I'm glad that this turn was made, and she's essentially working Daniel over, man. Daniel doesn't stand a chance. He's just
he's
done
for whatever reason,
Yeah.
she has him wrapped around her.
Yeah.
Even after the stuff that she did, he's still like, yeah, I still want to hang out. I still want to party with you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what she allows him to think, and she's going to continue to work her angle.
Yep.
So yeah, all right. So I think now we can transition back to the dance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Matt and Dr. Glenn end up getting in there, and they're both kind of dancing in the spotlight with Kingpin. And
I do find it
Vanessa.
funny in the moment where Matt's like, "You're gonna have to lead."
Oh yeah.
Like that was like I felt like that was an interesting like take. And also I just want to throw out one more line before we like really get into this dance scene. When Dr. Glenn is talking to Vanessa earlier in the episode, and Vanessa says, "Oh, I don't think we need to be seeing each other anymore. That issue is dead and buried." And I was like, oh, I love that. I love that. Like the truth of it, but the like complete like just playing over the fact that you straight up just murdered someone.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh man, that is very good. Good point. Good shout.
Yeah. So we can get back into it. So you have the traditional like, Matt does this kind of traditional, almost like playful "I'm a blind guy" moment where where they bump into each other and he's like, "Oh, can I cut in?" and then takes her.
This is after he overhears that Vanessa is the one who made the call to move Point Extra to general population in hopes that he would be killed, and then she was going to reveal some information to Kingpin, but Matt ends up cutting in, and because he knows and he points it out, and she's like, "I know it was you. You had Foggy killed," and he's like calling her out, and she's trying to leave, but he's holding her tight. And she says, "And we all know you're Daredevil," that kind of thing, right?
Yes.
And I did find that dialogue between them very, very interesting.
Yes.
And a part of me was like, what is Kingpin going to do to Dr. Glenn is what I kind of was thinking, but they ended up having a pleasant conversation.
Yes.
Like it was very like constructive and very like building up. Like, I don't know. It was very interesting on the two dynamics of the conversations.
Well, I think it's also like in that moment, what he essentially was playing at is he knows that in this manipulation of Dr. Glenn, it is more advantageous for him to still seem as if he is a sane, rational person.
Right.
Whereas he can tell that Matt is fraying, and Dr. Glenn brings that up,
Yeah.
and how, like, he isn't who he used to be. He's, I'm worried about him. I'm like,
Yeah.
he's not the same person. And I think in that moment, the best thing that he can do is not be Kingpin, but be the ear that she needs to listen.
Right. Yeah.
Or that in that situation where, once again, he's creating a situation where even more Fisk seems like the sane, rational person who is in the right, and Matt seems like he is a fraying mental, in a fraying mental state that is working further and further towards
Yeah.
the wrong slash a mental breakdown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. And how about the visuals here? We had talked about how on length throughout these episodes where Kingpin has not been able to be his true self. He's been wearing
Yes,
the dark suits, and now at the black and white party,
and
he's
he's
wearing the white suit.
white.
And he
Yes,
has revealed himself to Vanessa. She has embraced him, and so like Vanessa and him, they're wearing white and red at a black and white party,
yes,
which the white fits, but the red is 100% out of the dress attire.
yes,
But how interesting it was at the choice where when they switch partners, red Vanessa is with red Daredevil, like the fact that he's Daredevil,
yes.
and then white Dr. Glenn and white Kingpin. Do you think there's some significance there? Besides the Daredevil being red and Vanessa, like Dr. Glenn wearing white and Kingpin wearing white. Do you feel like that is going to have a play to where they may land on the
Land on
same
the same
side?
side.
Yeah.
I think there is a possibility of that, or at the very least, Dr. Glenn will momentarily be on Kingpin's side because she's unaware of the
True nature.
true
Yeah.
nature of Fisk, and she, once again, like we stated earlier, she does not see the full picture.
Right. Yeah.
She just sees, like I said, Matt's mental state is very quickly deteriorating.
Right.
And, maybe some things happen where later on, maybe Fisk lays something out and does something very nice
Yeah.
for Matt. But Matt is, because he, knows who Fisk really is and what he's trying to get at, he pushes back, and it looks incredibly, not gracious for him refusing.
Yeah. No, I mean, maybe that can happen. I do think Dr. Glenn will land on Kingpin's view of things, but not
Yes.
necessarily his execution of things. I think his stance on vigilantes
Yes.
is 100% her stance on vigilantes, and I do
Yeah.
think she's going to continue that mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas he might be taking it to the extremist level.
I do think there is a point to where, like, I think she may agree with him on that point, but I think there will be a point where maybe he kills a vigilante
Right.
or has a vigilante killed. That is a line that when she crossed it, she knew that was something she never wanted to be crossed again.
Yeah, that's good, man, because she literally shot down Muse like
Yes.
in cold blood. So, right. I mean, rightfully so. She was gonna die.
Yeah. It was. I mean, yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely justified, but I think it was one of those moments for her,
Mhm.
where, in the way that she's talked about it since,
Right.
it's very much like she sees that and it haunts her.
Yeah. Yeah, and she even says to a point where it's as much Daredevil's fault as Muse that caused her to do that violence
Yes.
because of how they've opened the door for this type of behavior.
Yeah, the classic idea of, like, the Batman. How Batman is like, how many villains would there actually be in Gotham if there was no Batman?
Yeah, absolutely. And see, that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is because Tyler's not here to keep DC out of this conversation
Yep.
in the MCU. So you're welcome.
Yes.
Anyway, so we learned that Poindexter's out as far as like Vanessa telling Kingpin, or Buck tells Kingpin, but Vanessa's kind of like, hey, there's something else going on here. And Matt is listening around into his surroundings, and he hears the gun cock, and he knows that Bullseye's there, and he jumps in front of the shot that is
Yes.
appears to be heading towards Kingpin.
Yes.
And he jumps in front and takes the shot, and now he is lying in the floor. Everyone's panicking, running away, and Matt's laying there in his open wound, blood, with Dr.
Yes.
Glenn at his
Just
side.
at his side, very, very concerned.
Yes.
It's very much, and you see Buck kind of like pushing out
Kingpin.
Kingpin. They're trying to get him clear of the situation. There's just kind of like craziness is just kind of ensuing.
Yes.
And so now that we've kind of said the fact that Matt's been shot, part of the reason I was getting at with Kingpin is like, what if he's like essentially going to be paying for all of Matt's medical bills? And
Yeah.
he kind of pushes back on that, and Dr. Glenn doesn't understand why he isn't willing to let him pay for them.
I could see that being a
Like,
possibility.
and like he kind of almost goes over the top in his like rebuke of Fisk.
Yeah.
And like maybe he gets, angry and goes over the top with it. And in that moment, it just seems like Fisk is trying to do the right thing. He literally saved his life. At least we believe that's what was happening there.
Right.
Like he saved his life at that gala that he was invited to. It almost looks like Fisk is saying, I'm sorry this happened to you at this event where I invited you. Like, you saved my life. Let me take care of you.
Right.
And, Murdoch just knows him in his manipulative ways and pushes back so hard that it makes him look even more mentally unstable.
Yeah, the full push away for
Yes.
Dr. Glenn, essentially, right?
Yes.
So here you go. Here's a little impromptu buy or sell. Buy or sell, Bullseye was aiming for Matt all along.
Gosh, that is, I really don't know. Like, it is, like, because I understand both sides of the coin on this one. Like, there is just the fact that Bullseye was just super mad at Kingpin for the fact that he put him into Gen Pop, and he was just taking a shot at Kingpin.
Right, and that's what you see.
Yes,
that's
what you
it
see.
appears to happen, right?
That's just what appears to happen. Now, on the other side, on this flip side, two things kind of point at the fact that it might be his original target might have been Matt, or his real target was Matt.
Yeah.
Number one, the fact that essentially one of the biggest pulls on Bullseye is he doesn't miss.
Correct.
So that's number one. Number two, he never takes a second shot.
Yeah.
Which in that moment makes it kind of seem like he hit his target.
That's exactly where I was getting at.
Yes. So, it very much is almost like this idea of, because he had time. If he really wanted to take a second shot at Kingpin, I feel like he could have.
He could have done it. There was a moment there. Like, Buck did not get to him immediately. Like, it was like a shot. Everybody's looking around. And he's looking at Matt, and then Buck shows up. Like, it was not.
There is almost this moment of it. Almost felt like it was too long.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
just for a moment, it feels like there was at least a beat or two too long where Poindexter was not taking advantage of the fact that he still had everybody in disarray, or maybe he had already completed his task.
And I don't think he's the guy where he's going to shoot and then drop the gun and run away real quick. No. He's going to shoot, verify what he has done, and then leave.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of thing. He's not going to run away. He's just going to mosey on.
He just disappear into the crowd.
So a part of me is like, I think that he knew that Matt would step in front of that bullet.
Yeah.
And he took that shot on purpose. I don't know. Am I reading into that too much? Probably. It probably means nothing. He probably was shooting at Fisk because of Vanessa's actions that he didn't realize were Vanessa's actions.
I don't think it's even Vanessa's action. I think it's literally the fact that Kingpin had him moved into Gen Pop.
But he didn't, though. Vanessa had him moved in Gen Pop. Vanessa was the one who did. Kingpin had no idea that he was in Gen Pop. Like, yeah, that's what Vanessa was trying to tell him before Matt cut in. Was that I did something, and it was I moved Poindexter into Gen Pop. That kind of thing. That's what it was.
I do think there's also an interesting idea is, how is Daredevil going to feel about the fact that essentially he allowed Poindexter to get out of prison?
Yeah.
Because he essentially facilitated his jailbreak by going over the top, by letting his feelings get the better of him, and putting Poindexter in a situation where he could escape. Essentially, like, is he going to see that
he'll feel guilty? 100%.
Yeah, like his guilt in that front. I do want to point out one other cool thing is, like, so in the Daredevil universe, we've had his giant painting, of course, which is we've seen a couple times that's splattered with the red blood from Kingpin and Daredevil's fight. And then later on, we get to see the scene with Muse essentially becoming his own artwork in that moment. And essentially in this, we almost get the same thing with Kingpin's suit, because it becomes the canvas for Matt's blood after he takes the shot from Poindexter.
That's good, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was an interesting like play on like the idea of, and it's almost kind of leaning into this idea of like ruined innocence, because all these things are like white, pure as the driven snow in a way, and they're being essentially sullied by blood in a lot of ways. So it's like there's all these like moments of like innocence kind of being destroyed.
Yeah, dude. Dang, dude, that's good. So yeah, we do see the blood on Kingpin's suit,
Yes.
but then he's rushed out of there, and Dr. Glenn is seen there holding Matt, and then the scene's over. So show's over, episode's over. Well, not show's over. The episode's over, and the finale is next week. So, we got a lot. We got a lot going on for next week as far as the finale episode. I feel like there's still a good bit of questions to be answered, and hopefully so. Like, for example, the task force. Like, what's going to happen with the task force? I feel like they kind of are they free reign here, or is Matt going to put an end to the task force? That kind of thing.
Are they going to that, or I don't know. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things that could end up happening. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe Poindexter becomes a part of the task force.
Oof.
Like that would be an intense thing.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of crazy things that could happen. Maybe there'd be an interesting situation where Matt wakes up in a hospital, and on one side of him is Dr. Glenn, and on the other side is Karen, and there's a very awkward situation.
Wow.
That's
interesting.
Yeah. So, there's all kinds of interesting stuff that can play out. How dirty is Kingpin's hands gonna get? Like, is he gonna are they gonna? Who's gonna fight? How is this gonna end? Is Daredevil going? Because we're gonna see him in his suit one more time, of course. We have to.
Yeah.
But who is he going to be focusing on to take this out? Like, is it going to be Kingpin? Is it going to be Poindexter? Is it going to be the task force?
Yeah.
Part
of me wants to see Daredevil suiting up, going after the task force, Punisher coming in. So then it's Daredevil and Punisher working their way through the task force to get to a one-on-one with Kingpin. That would be
cool.
Ideal for me.
That would be an interesting situation for sure.
Ooh, Shamato, buy or sell. We are getting a hallway style fight.
Oh, that would be phenomenal. That would be awesome. Like, it would work really well, because like they almost kind of alluded at it for a moment when you see the commissioner in the kitchen.
The tight quarters there.
Yeah, entire task force is right there. So I mean, you could see maybe it's alluding to the fact that they're gonna have to work through through the task force to get to that. I would love to see the Punisher going through and just berating them for using his
his
logo,
symbol,
his morality, going at that kind of stuff.
Dude, so good, man.
Yeah.
So good.
And I don't know, I would love to see him show his face to Powell at some point. That, I know essentially that would only have to only could really happen right before Powell's death.
Right.
But
it needs to happen, yeah.
Yeah, it would be really cool if he was just in his full Daredevil costume, and he just reveals it to him.
That would be cool. All right, so we are definitely looking forward to next week. Hopefully have T-Roll back. We'll see. Actually, you know what? We don't need the guy. We don't need him.
Nope.
But yeah. So tune in next week, guys. We will be going over the Daredevil finale. Check out our bonus Star Wars coverage as well. We have Rogue One retro review out there. Check that out. And we also did a recap of Andor Season 1 in preparations for, get this, next week. We are getting we are getting Andor Season 2.
Yes.
How incredible is that? So, well, actually, I guess a week and a half. Whatever. Yeah. But anyway, get excited, people. Get excited. Anyway, all that in mind, for Shamato and myself, we really appreciate you guys. Go ahead and give us that like and follow, and follow us at Royal Geek Pod. We'll see you next time, you peasants.